Welcome into Duval Daily, presented by GenJag.com. I'm Jordan DeLugo. Thanks so much for being here. Wednesday, June 18th. Right now, we are taking a look at players who are in a make or break year for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this was kind of inspired by PFF had an article where it was make or break players for each team. But the way they were viewing it is if this player plays well, plays to their potential, it can make that team's season in 2025. If they don't play well, don't play up to their potential, get injured, whatever it may be, they could break that team's 2025 season. And PFF picked Tyson Campbell, which if you were paying attention to the most important players for the Jaguars in 2025, I had him very high on the list. So I agree with that. Like if he plays well, the secondary and the entire defense can really come together. But that's not what I'm looking at here. I'm looking at players who, for their personal careers, really need to have a good year, because if they do, there's a good chance they get signed either by the Jaguars or elsewhere to be starters in the future, or at least critical role players. Or if they don't play very well, you could be looking at fighting for roster spots the rest of your career. So I think there's several players that kind of fit this bill. We're going to dive into it here today. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And let me know who you think is in a make or break season in the comment section below. So Devin Lloyd is the obvious one at the top. I mean, he is a former first round pick who is going into a contract year. The Jaguars did not pick up his fifth year option, so he's going into a contract year. He is going to be starting next to Foye Oluokun. And I think this one is really interesting because depending on who you talk to, there's people who study the NFL at a high level, analysts who look at Devin Lloyd as like a borderline Pro Bowl type of player. There's also folks who don't think he should really be on the field. So I fall somewhere in the middle of that. Like I think that his high level stuff is really good. I think he's usually playing at a high level. He's great against the run, but the plays where he gets lost in coverage, he really gets lost. And so you got to kind of see if maybe that was a product of playing in a defense that didn't make a whole lot of sense of, this is a big year for him, because if he plays well, if he plays to his potential, if he has fewer, mental lapses or whatever you want to call them in coverage, there is a chance Devin Lloyd goes out and gets paid. Now, the off-ball linebacker position is not one of the higher paid positions in the league, right? Like if he goes and gets like close to top of the market, it's going to be around 17, 18 million, something like that at linebacker, which would be huge for him, right? But if he has a season in which there's a lot of just errors, whether that's physical, mental, whatever they may be, the Jaguars have a lot of linebacker depth. They drafted a linebacker in the 4th round this year. It's possible he doesn't even finish the season as the starter if he doesn't play with more consistency. So if that ends up being the case, then he's probably, going into free agency just trying to find a backup job somewhere. And being a former first round pick, every team in the league has a file on pretty much every player, right? And so certainly Devin Lloyd being a former first round pick, somebody who is highly valued in the draft, teams are going to have the ability to go back and look at their notes and all that type of stuff about Devin Lloyd, watch the tape, obviously. And I would guess he would find a role-playing job somewhere, because at the very least, again, you have a really good run-defending linebacker, somebody who can blitz, somebody who you should use to attack. And that's what the Jaguars should do this year as much as they can. Use him downhill. Use him to attack the football versus retreating away from the line of scrimmage as much as you can. I think that would benefit Devin Lloyd. That would benefit the Jaguars defense. And so, again, he's the type of guy that, and I don't think he can't do it physically in coverage. You saw in college how good he was in coverage, and you've seen at times the length and the playmaking he has in coverage during his NFL career. So it's an interesting one. I think he could end up being a top 5 paid linebacker, I think he could end up being a role player after 2025. So that's obviously very big make or break for him. He could be breaking the bank and making it big, or he could be just trying to break into a starting lineup following 2025. Buster Brown is one I think is very interesting because it seems like he's going to get the opportunity to play some snaps on the Jaguars defense. A lot of folks think he might be in line to be the starter opposite Tyson Campbell. That's going to really depend on how much Travis Hunter plays on the defensive side of the ball, which is still unclear. I think anybody who has like definitive information about that is full of it, because I don't think the Jaguars know yet. I don't think anybody knows yet exactly how much Travis Hunter is going to play on the defensive side of the ball. But Buster Brown, if he's able to kind of land that starting job and play a lot of snaps, and it won't be a full-time starter snaps because Travis Hunter will be out there some. There's no doubt about that. But if Buster Brown is able to get on the field and play to his potential as a zone coverage defender, there's a chance a team could like sign him to compete for a starting job, or the Jaguars could retain him to compete for the starting job outside. But if he plays to his floor that we've seen at times in the past, he might just be fighting for a roster spot, whether it's in Jacksonville or somewhere else next year. So I really think if he shows out and shows, again, the best of his ability, as a former late round pick, somebody who was very productive in college, somebody who has at times been impressive for the Jaguars, who does play with good effort and will bring it, there's a chance that he could get signed, maybe not to outright be a starter somewhere, but to be like a third outside corner or a player who's brought in to compete for the starting role. I think that's very possible. Still only 25 years old right now, I believe. Will turn 26 this year. So it's a big year for Buster Brown if he can get on the field. If he doesn't get on the field, well, he'll probably be fighting for a roster spot next year somewhere. And if he does get on the field and doesn't play to the best of his ability, same thing. I have Devon Hamilton here, which is an interesting one because he has earned a second contract in the NFL already. He's gotten paid a lot. But Devon Hamilton is going into a year in which it's not a contract year, but the Jaguars have the ability to move on following the 2025 season from a salary cap standpoint if they decide that that's the direction they want to go in. But I think, as a big interior run defender, as somebody who can push the pocket, who can be explosive off the ball and use leverage and be strong and powerful, there's a chance that Devon Hamilton, if he plays like the guy we were seeing prior to his abscess on his spine, there's a chance he could be a starter in this league still somewhere. There's a chance that he could be just kept in Jacksonville for the 2026 season because they like the role that he plays and they find him very valuable, right? But if he plays kind of like how he did in 23 after he returned, which he really shouldn't have returned in 2023, and then into 2024 early on, I don't know that you're going to see a guy that really has much interest in the league. So if he can get back to the pre-injury or health scare Devon Hamilton this year, he's going to have whether it's in Jacksonville or elsewhere, he's going to have a lot of teams interested in him, whether it be as a full-time starter or just kind of that rotational piece, like a third interior defensive lineman. So it's a big year for him. It absolutely is. Deami Brown, another guy who has received a second contract now, but it was a one-year deal by the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. It's big for him because if he, so in Washington this past year, that was most productive year, and then he had a really big playoff run. A lot of it was screens and deep shots. So if he can in this expanded role in the Jaguars offense that they're trying to give him, if he can prove that he can be reliable, and when I was doing the breakdown yesterday of how I expect the target share to go, I'm expecting him to get like 80 plus targets this year. And if he is very productive with those targets, I think that he'll have a chance to be signed as a starting receiver, whether that's a third receiver or a second receiver, and whether that be in Jacksonville or elsewhere. I think Jacksonville is in a really unique position with their receiver room to bring him back if they want to, during the season on a new deal or after the season, because they've invested a lot into the receiver room with Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter, but they're not paying anyone. Gabe Davis, but he's not here, right? So they don't have a ton of money tied up in their wide receiver room into the future. Like Brian Thomas Jr.'s extension wouldn't be kicking in until he's going into year 2. So 2026 would be year 3, 2027 would be year 4, 2028 would be year 5, 2029, and then the year after that for Travis Hunter. So they could reasonably sign Deami Brown to a nice starting contract, keep him around, and just have a three-headed monster at receiver if things go well for him this year. But if things don't go well, which I don't expect them to not go well, I think he's going to play well enough for the Jaguars for either them to want to keep him around or for someone to want to have him as a top 3 receiver on their roster somewhere in the league. But if things don't go well for him, could be fighting for a roster spot in the future, right? And we're going to round it out here with a couple of offensive linemen. I think Ezra Cleveland is in a make or break year in a way. I would imagine he would be signed no matter what happens this year somewhere. If the Jaguars decide to move on following the 2025 season, and they can do so, they can save some money against the cap if they move on from him following 2025. It's not a true contract year for him, but for all intents and purposes, it kind of is. He's fighting for his job. The Jaguars drafted Wyatt Milam, all that good stuff. 2026, they could move on and save some cap space if they want to. It wouldn't be like a super clean team out unless they did post June 1, where they could save $7.75 million against the cap following the 2025 season. But they could decide to move on if they want to. They could also keep him as an expensive backup for 2026 if they want to, if they like what he brings. But ultimately, he's trying to hold off Wyatt Milam, who the Jaguars drafted in the 3rd round, who the Jaguars really like, and prioritized getting him by moving back up into the 3rd round. So to me, he's fighting to be a starter in the NFL. I think if he loses this job to Wyatt Milam, he's probably not going to be a starter again in the league. At least not somebody who comes into a season as a starter. He could potentially have to, fill in, spot start, whatever. But I think if he's not able to hold off Wyatt Milam for the duration of the 2025 season, then he's probably done as a starter in the league. So I don't really think that's fair. I think he's a quality starting player. Not going to be like your best interior offensive lineman or your best offensive lineman, but somebody who deserves a starting spot in this league. But just kind of the way things go, that might not be how the league views it if Wyatt Milam comes in here and beats him out, or if he struggles and then Wyatt Milam ends up taking over. So it's going to be interesting there for sure at left guard. And then at center, I think Robert Hainsey's fighting for his job. He got signed this year by this regime, and those are 2 feathers in his cap, right? But Tampa replaced him last year with a 1st-round pick. If he plays average, below average at center, I think the Jaguars will be looking to do the same thing. And he's signed to be a starter around $7 million per year, but $7 million ain't a lot for a starter, even at center. So it clearly wasn't like this signing where the Jaguars are inking somebody they feel like is a long-term piece, starter, if you will. Like, it wasn't like a Patrick McCary level signing who got almost double what Robert Hainsey got, right? So I think if Hainsey doesn't play well, there's a chance that he's going to be a backup once again, and then who knows if he'll ever be in a starting lineup other than injury. So those are some guys I think have a really, really big year ahead of them, make or break type seasons for some of these players. I didn't include Anton Harrison in this because it's year 3. There's been enough high level stuff where even if the Jaguars wanted to move on from him because they don't like the effort or consistency or whatever, I think a team will take a swing on him. If that ends up being the case, I think a team would take a swing on Walker Little as well. And, you know, is it make or break for Eric Armstead? Maybe in Jacksonville, but that guy's already had a hell of a career. He's already made it in a big way. Jordan Lewis, he's already made it. He got his big bag as a nickel corner from the Jaguars. He's already made it. Eric Murray and all these guys are like 30-plus years old. All these guys have really made it in the league. You could certainly argue that with the Jaguars, it could be make or break type seasons for some of these players, but I think Jordan Lewis will play well. I think Eric Armstead will play well. Eric Murray has always been a stopgap type of starter. I think that will continue moving forward. I don't know that he'll be, I guess you could say it's make or break for him in terms of like being a starter for the Jaguars moving forward. Because the Jaguars could certainly look to upgrade the safety spot. Obviously, they went and got Caleb Ransaw. They could look to upgrade again in 2025 in the draft or free agency. But again, Murray has already made it. He's played a long time in this league and started a lot of football games, played a lot of football games. So that'll do it here. Really appreciate y'all tuning in. Let me know again who you think it's a make or break year for in the comment section below. And if you enjoy the content, please like. If you have not subscribed, please do that as well. Helps us out a ton. Y'all have a good one.